Today's conversation is on the history of emergent art spaces and practices in Asia in the 1990s. And I would like to thank our very dear old friends for joining us this morning, and our distinguished panelists, Mella Jaarsma, Judy, Freya, Sibayan, Jin-Suk and Kith. We will be going back in time, at least 2 decades, and talking about the role of alternative art spaces in Indonesia, the Philippines, South Korea, and Hong Kong, where our panelists have operated from. In the last 5 years, Asia has witnessed incredible developments. Both public and private museums have opened in Singapore, Jakarta, Chiang Mai, Seoul, and Shanghai. And the art market has mesmerized dealers and collectors from around the world. Small regional auction houses have opened up in places like KL, and massive dedicated buildings for galleries are being erected, and international galleries are scrambling to set up dealerships in Hong Kong's most expensive real estate. And art fairs have mushroomed across the region, whether in car parks in Manila or to mammoth convention centers in Taipei. But what did the cultural landscape look like before we became so spoiled for choice? On this note, I would like to introduce our 5 panelists who have joined us today to tell us about the role their initiatives played at home and across the region, well before the strong commercial and institutional infrastructures for art were established. Proceeding in alphabetical order, Mella Jaarsma is an artist from the Netherlands, but she has lived in Indonesia since 1984. There, together with her fellow artist and life partner, Nindityo Adiparmono, they founded Cemeti Art House in 1999 in Yogyakarta. 1988, which has been one of the most influential spaces for contemporary art in Indonesia. And I'm very, very happy to say that the organization still exists. And 2 years ago, they renamed their space Cemeti Institute for Art and Society. Judy Freya Sibayan is a conceptual artist living and working in Manila. She has also taught art for 3 decades and is widely known in the Philippines and the region for her institutional critique performances and work related to galleries and museums, which she calls a practice of materialist critique of art. Jin-Suk is the director of Namjoon Paik Art Center in Gyeonggi-do, South Korea. Previous to this, Jin-Suk was the director and co-founder of the artist-run space Alternative Space Loop, which is celebrating their 20th anniversary this year. And last but not least, Kith. Tsang is an artist, professor, and one of the founding members of Parasite. It was originally an artist-run organization established in 1996 in Hong Kong, and he is also the co-founder of the School of Everyday Life, a nonprofit here in the New Territories, which promotes art, culture, life, and environmental education. So to begin today's conversation, I would like to ask all the panelists to walk us through a very short slide presentation of their organization or their initiatives back in the 1990s. So Mella, if you'd like to start. Yeah. So this is the okay.
Yeah. Hello, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I would like to start with thanking Art Basel Hong Kong for creating this conversation. And I would like to thank also and to congratulate ArtAsiaPacific, the magazine, which exists 25 years. And it really helped us to promote and to be visible as a platform as well. So we like to thank ArtAsiaPacific magazine. I push here for the first thing. Oh yeah, okay. I came to Indonesia in 1984 to study as an art student in Jakarta, and which after I moved to Yogyakarta. It's a small city of 3 million people in the center of Java, one of the islands in Indonesia. In the 80s, I start with the 80s because the art space that I created together with my husband Indonesian husband Nindito. We started in 1988, and the situation in that time in Indonesia, or especially in Yogyakarta, was there was a big art institute, and art students from all over Indonesia, also from the other islands, they came to Yogyakarta to study. But after that, they did not go back to their islands or to their other cities because there was no art infrastructure. So most of them, they all sort of stayed in Java. And then in the 80s, actually, when I studied there, they also, after the students graduated, they went to Bali or to Jakarta to look for jobs there. So especially in Yogyakarta, the students came there, but there were only several art spaces. So there was one art space from the government, and there was one art space which until now still exists, is from the national newspaper Kompas. But if you make an exhibition there in that time, after the exhibition is finished, the contact with the art space was also finished. So they never sort of promoted the artist further in their career after they made an exhibition. So in 1988, I set up an art space called Cemeti, or in that time, Cemeti Gallery, with the idea not only give space for artists to exhibit their works, but also sort of guide them further in their career and help them to promote further. So, for example, we started with setting up an archive, so making documentation, in that time photos and slides of the artists. We started with clippings, we started with creating CVs and things like that. So when people come to visit us, we had something to show. And we could connect the people who were interested in the art together with the artist. What was interesting in the 90s especially, that it was really the beginning of people getting interested in what was going on in this kind of region in Southeast Asia. And I just click through some works, but it was the time of the first international exhibitions, the Asia-Pacific Triennale, the Triennale in Fukuoka. And this became a platform to artists to meet, and this was very important. So this was the place where Southeast Asian artists could meet and exchange, from which thereon they could develop their own small exchange programs. Because in that time we had not money to travel to other places. For example, Indonesian artists could not travel to Thailand or Singapore. There was just no money for that. So we could meet in this kind of other international platforms. We had monthly changing exhibitions, so we invited artists to come and create anything that they wanted to do. And what happened, especially in the 90s, that we became a platform for artists who brought political and social issues in their work. The first 10 years, Cemeti worked under the dictatorial regime. So it was Suharto was the president until the end of the 90s, 98. So the artworks that we shown really had to work with the idea of censorship, commenting on the power structure, but still expressing the things they want to express. So it's already 5 minutes, I guess, so I go quickly. Very few female artists in that time. We were always looking for them. But so nowadays, luckily, it really developed. It's not 50-50%, but still, yeah, now it's really growing with the young female artists. So this is one of the artists, Marintan Sirait, in that time. And also it really started with, we gave space to installations, performance. So artists really started to experiment with different materials. This is one of the female artists. She's from Bali, Murniasi. It's really personal, feminist paintings. She used the traditional Balinese technique to express herself. She's an autodidact. And this was one of the last exhibitions in our very small art space. So we just rented a house, and the front room, 4 by 7 meters, became our exhibition space. It started actually really like an experiment, just to invite our friends to exhibit. This was a performance by Harsono. It's called Slot in the Box. It was during the last election under Suharto. And it was not allowed to gather with more than 5 people. So we just did this very quick action in a field close by. We only invited some of the journalists to come, and then just the people who just passed by. This became very iconic for that period of time. Okay. This was the last exhibition in that space in 1998, and after that we had some funding. We sold some works to the Asia-Pacific Triennale in Australia, and with that money we could buy a new, we could buy a space, we could build a space, which is until now still our space. Thank you.
Yes, I guess let's go through this quickly. So it took 11 years, very fast, from being a student all the way to graduating, becoming curatorial assistant at the heart of the heart of the art world in Manila. 76, I graduated from my BFA. Right away, I became a curatorial assistant at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. 11 years later, I became the director of the same museum where I first worked. So that was a very quick, I guess, a speedy, how do you call that? A speedy life from being a student all the way to becoming the director of the same museum where I started. 86 was crucial because that was when the Marqueses were deposed. Cultural centers being Imelda Marquez's playground, so to speak. But an oxymoron, actually, that was supposed to be where the avant-garde of the Philippines was born. But I have to question the fact that how can an avant-garde be born within a fascist institution? So I became the director with my MFA in 87. I was there for 2 years, and that's when I experienced a great dilemma, well, I was actually traumatized. I saw artists knocking on the door. Everybody wanted to have a piece of the power. The center became a space of democratic art, supposedly, because it was no longer just a space for the state to have its wishes and have its produce the culture that it wanted to produce. And it was renamed Contemporary Art Museum of the Philippines. So rightfully, I was curating exhibitions that were contemporary, but it was in conflict with the new regime's desire for inviting everybody to show in the space. In other words, with the finite resources, how can one exhibit everybody? I was told to go to openings where there were landscapes and sunsets, and I would tell my boss, but that's not contemporary. I'm going to waste my time there. So I was in conflict with Nick Chongson, who was the artistic director then, but he was of left-leaning, so he wanted everybody social realist, sunset painters, everybody, because now the whole cultural milieu had to be exhibited in CCP. That was 2 years later. I realized I could not do the work. I didn't have the wherewithal to work with an administration that was in conflict with what I thought a contemporary art museum was, is, will be, should be. And I realized that artists are totally dependent on monolithic structures like government institutions, huge museums for their own legitimation. And I realized that perhaps one can make art within the scale of one's resources and one's daily life. Thus was born Scapular Gallery Nomad. I wore a scapular. And the first 2 years, I said it'll last 2 years. And that was the invitation on the left. And then artists would say, no, I can't show. And then I would add other artists. And then I would scratch them out and other artists would be interested. and I would show them, and that's my calling card, curator and performance artist, Scapulary Gallery Nomad. Eventually, it lasted for 5 years, and that's me walking the face of the earth, where everywhere I would walk and stand, that would be the site for making art. So the gallery both sought its audience. It also, as it walked, the audience would be there for me to interact with. The gallery, me as the vehicle, was very talkative, discursive. I would explain things. I wore the gallery. The artwork would be shown in the front scapular, and I would give it to you, and you would hold it. And then at the back would be the catalogs. And after experiencing the work, I would say, please get a catalog, bring it home. And most of the time, the gallery was performed when breaking bread with others, family, friends. I would even go to other openings, and it would be a gallery within a gallery, or a gallery within a museum, or my seatmate in the airplane going to Paris, or my dentist. And Chuyoshi Ozawa, who painted soy sauce paintings, encouraged the audience to smell the paintings. That's that. And then Carla Sakase, because I told her that most of the exhibitions are experienced when breaking bread, she created a tablecloth, and that's the tablecloth with the words. And national artist Lucrecia Casilag composed a song for the gallery because it was her 65th birthday. So I had it produced, and then I would play it in a Walkman. The audience would listen in the Walkman, and that's her composition. And then Simran Gill created this wonderful piece called, it was a Tibetan portable altar, which is perfect as the gallery. She installed it with lights so that when you look at her work, which is a post stamp of the GAO, the gallery itself, you would like click on the light, and then you would see the work. And then Mary Rose Mendoza sent me this beauty queen sashes that says bitch or feminist, and they're like 7 sashes, and I would wear 1 sash a day. And I was also the publisher. I published these little catalogs. I wrote them, I did everything. They were all Xeroxes. And I'd bind them, and I'd have a great time creating the catalogs. I also delivered papers in conferences to talk about the work. And then there was a growing archive, which was exhibited in Lüneburg, Germany. That's the one on the right. So it was also a portable archive. I sent it from Vienna to Germany because I didn't have time when I was in Manila. So the Jiffy bag, it says, to open Jiffy bag, which becomes the book archive, just cut along the lines. And when the people in Lüneburg received it, they just cut along the lines, and then they opened it. It was a book archive. And then Guangzhou Biennale, that's like the start of the archive with those, see the one in the upper left, those are the scapulars that I made, and I would sew them and embroider them. And that was the start of the growing archive. Eventually, though, after 5 years, I got tired. And I said, it's time to but everybody says, but I want to show some more. And I said, no, I'm tired. I got to do something else. So I had a retrospective with all of the galleries there. And then all of the archive, I put in a portable archive that you carry in a backpack. And that was shown in the Guangzhou Biennale. And I am still archiving, and I'm still minding the archive now. To summarize, as an institutional critique, we are the institution. Everybody creates art, not just the artist, the curator, the gallery director, the manager, the exhibition designer, the critic, publisher, editor, gallery dealer, archivist, historian, register. All of these things I did. I was the whole institution precisely because I wanted to be in control of the production of my own art. Yes, so the timeline just pretty much lists down every person I met, all the conversations I had, all the conferences I attended, everybody who wanted to show with me, and eventually ended in Guangzhou Biennale with amassing a whole material of archives. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I'm very happy to join this conversation section, and thank you for Elaine, and thank you for Basel. Just first, let me briefly introduce Space Loop. Yeah, I'm always insist Space Loop, alternate space loop is first alternate space in Korea. It's founded February 6th in 1999. So before 1999, there's many alternative experimental project, but the space gallery kind of alternate space, which continuously, make some art project. It was not, exist in before the 1999. So that is the reason I'm always insist my space is the first alternate space in Korea. And then accidentally, the other alternate space is called Project Space Sarubia and Space Pool and Samji Art Space is open. So we can make some kind of alternate space movement in 1999 in Seoul, Korea. So this is alternate space. Alternate space, meaning of alternate space should be based on independent and experimental and non-profit. Meaning of independent is should be totally independent any other power group, political power group and capital power group. There's many space, in Korea. I think 3 kind of space exist and they're working very active. First one is commercial gallery, and second one is private and public museum, and third one is alternate space. And there is another space. First, it's called rental gallery. You know what I'm talking about, rental gallery. Artists rent a space. Yeah. Those kind of space was a lot in Korea at that time. Over 90% of the rental galleries was active in early and late 90s. So anyway, this is the space. The first time we started very small basement. We used very small basement venue. We started as an artist launch center, but we moved to this new building. It looks like very beautiful institution, but we moved to this space 2005. Yeah. And yeah, it looks like this. It's beautiful. One of my architecture designer, he's my good friend. He designed for me as a free. And this is our space. And then this year, we're doing 20th anniversary of our space. We're doing very big project, archiving project. And then our space, locally, our space have a few aims. First, purpose of the aim is finding and supporting and promoting young emerging artists, Korean artists. Yeah, this is image of the 20th anniversary. This is one of the artists we select. It's kind of competition. We selected young artists, 2 or 3 artists for each year. Yeah, Yonali is one of the young artists we selected. So, and second aim is this is image for the young artists, show emerging artists. And second aim is some of artists, old artists, who needs re-promotion, re-evaluate. We selected 2 or 3 artists for each year, and we give some opportunity to have a show in our space, and then we make a new discourse and re-promoting for those kind of old artists, not only young artists. Some of artists needs old artists, especially artists, those kind of promotion system in art world. And Tsang is one of the other artists. And also third aim, our alternate space, Loopspace has networking with other culture, other genre. Our Loop Art Space is located Hongik University area in Seoul. Hongik University area is one of the most famous area for the young multicultural area. So there is many live club and performance plays. It's good for the networking other, genre and culture. At that time, there's three very important keyword in cultural art world in contemporary in Korea. Is that convergence and global mobility and diversity. So our, my alternate space is should be, generate some of project in these three concepts: global mobility and diversity and convergence. So this is kind of converging project to networking other culture. Yeah. Sometimes we're doing some music festival. And this is our ongoing project. In terms of contents, my Loopspace, there have several ongoing projects globally. One is the very important project we are doing, is titled Move on Asia. It started from 2004. It's Asia Moving Image Festival, co-organized by approximately 20 and 30 Asian curators. So, Loopspace is trying to research how digital technology development influenced contemporary art and how post-capitalism influenced, contemporary art. And finally, what is Asianism? What is meaning of Asian identity in contemporary art? So our ongoing project, all networking ongoing project, is following these three, aims, three purposes. So Move on Asia is one of the our ongoing, very important ongoing project for about what is, Asianism, what is identity of the Asian contemporary art in moving image genre, and then what is the meaning of the moving image video artwork in revolutionary technology era. So this is image of the Move on Asia. So we already did 8 edition, and the other project, ongoing project we are doing is titled Oriental Metaphor. Yeah, Oriental Metaphor is that trying to research what is identity of Asia in contemporary art. What is Asianism? After 90s, after 80s, Asia is grows so fast economically. So we have some opportunity to read by us in contemporary art, read by Asia. So, modernism era, the contemporary art field is reading by Western, but we have a new opportunity after growth Asia economic system. So it's the right time to discuss what is meaning of Asia in contemporary art. So this is one of a project for research, this agenda. Okay, sorry. This is Art and Capital. It's a forum. We already did 3 editions, 3 times. How global capitalism influenced, contemporary art. After neoliberalism, the art and capital make a new relationship. Art, can be financialized as one of the investment tool. And we discuss about that, how art and capital develop an equal weight balance. So this is the Art and Capital seminar we are doing. So economists and sociologists, art dealer, art curator, all meet together and we discuss about how art and capital develop together as an equal weight balance. This is our forum we did. In Asia Space Networking Forum is one of the project we already did 5 times or 6 times. I don't remember. But anyway, this is the alternate networking project with Asia independent alternate space. So we're trying to networking Asia alternate space and then to create new project, alternative project can do it together. So we are always meet together and discuss about that to make a new discourse and new visual project. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. First of all, I would like to thank Elaine for the invitation to be here to share part of my memories with you. And I'm really happy to see my old friends this morning, although really briefly. But it's a good opportunity for me to just to go back to part of my history involving in the setting up Parasite, the art space. Back in 1996, right? It was the time 1 year before the handover of Hong Kong's sovereignty to China. And you could imagine the kind of atmosphere at that time in Hong Kong. Everyone is so anxious about the future regarding, say, freedom of speech, right, and freedom of expression, and so on. And that's why myself and my friends at that time, we were all so-called young artists, right? I was in my mid-30s, and my friends who helped set up Parasite, they were all in their 20s. Most of them were still studying in the art college at that time. So when we faced the so-called historical moment of Hong Kong, we would like to do something regarding our inner anxiety, right? We try to set up something to voice out our concern regarding the future of Hong Kong. And that's why we started with this Artists in Western project. Western means the Western district in Hong Kong. We found an abandoned shop space, and then we rented it for 3 months to work out our experimental projects. All of us at that time were working on installation art, which was really a kind of new art form in Hong Kong. Installation art, when we did it, we need space, and space in Hong Kong means something really physical and also something philosophical. Right? Space is something for us to express, and that's why we work on the 3-month project for ourselves to start with. But eventually, we found out that the whole art community in Hong Kong need that kind of space. And that's why a year later, we moved to the Sheung area to set up a long-term project. And we got funding from the Hong Kong Arts Development Council, which was set up in 1995. Okay, so our proposal, in a sense, helped the Arts Development Council to set up new policy when funding long-term projects like what we had at the time, which was a year-long project. And it was the very first time that the Arts Development Council gave money to organizations like us to have an experimental project for a year. And then since the space was situated in the historic area of Hong Kong where the British Army landed when they got hold of Hong Kong. So we worked quite a few projects on the way how we connect with the local community. And I was the so-called chairman for the very first 10 years of the space. And I kept on thinking about why we need art like this. And we kept on interacting with the local community. And eventually, what I got from the community was that we don't need this kind of art. Okay, this is a bit depressing or disappointing, but then, to me, this is a very positive feedback from the local community, which these are the founding members, or young guys. The feedback from the local community really helped me to think even deeper and broader regarding why we do art in Hong Kong. And then, which pushes me to think even broader and deeper on the issues of why people do art, why human beings do art. Okay, and that's why this is my work, the very first exhibitions in the Xiangwan Parasite. Right? So at this moment of time, when we look back, the very first exhibition with Art Basel, right? This world-class event, you can tell the rapid development of art in Hong Kong, which is a kind of, I don't know, maybe it's one of a kind of development which we rarely seen in the art world, right? But then the whole thing kept asking me, myself, on a broader issue. And after 10 years, I moved out from Parasite. There were two reasons. One, when we started, we have two camps of artists in the group. One is my kind of approach, which works more towards community art. And the other camp for those artist friends who were trained as gallery artists, right? So after 10 years, I thought it's time for the other camp to really move on with the art space to do something that they found appropriate to them. And this is what's happening now with the current Parasite, which is a very successful international art space. So I move away from Parasite and also the local art community, but I never give up art. So I try to use my experience, like this is the publication that we had during the Parasite time. Right, the one on the left is a kind of spreadsheet, an A3 size spreadsheet. We did that with zero budget. And after we got funding, we can do something really glossy and nice looking, like the one at the right. Right? A book form kind of magazine. I think it's the end of the. Okay, that's how Parasite moved from a very local kind of approach, a very community-based approach, to the one now it moved on to with an international exposure. Yes, please, Elaine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. So I want to start off with a question to all of you, which is, do you think your initiative was a form of cultural support? So for instance, what I'm talking about, was your initiative operating as a hybrid space, part Kunsthalle, part museum, part commercial gallery and education center? Or was it a kind of survival strategy against the status quo? For instance, the commercialization of art or state-sanctioned art?
Yes, it was survival in terms of not being co-opted by the larger structures and having the freedom to control the kind of production that I wanted where my art would go. And artists who were interested, agreeing with me that they were willing to exhibit their works in believing exactly in terms of what I was trying to do, which is just be dependent on your own resources, the scale of one person's life and one person's everyday life. So it was a way of surviving a situation where the other agencies will not control your art making. So it was an independence kind of survival.
A survival, but I think also showing possibilities in the art. So creating a space to express, and also express something which was not visible before. So critical expression, especially against the government, and also creating a place for discussion and different way of thinking. I think that's until now. So starting from a certain urgency, and then create programming around the urgencies. So yeah, of course it has to do with surviving as well, because like it starts from a certain ideology actually. I mean, there's a need to create this kind of openness and a place where these kind of things can happen. So, but it's a place to connect, and to a place where then in the end people can show and can discuss the things what is alive, and what they in that time, what they think, and because it was, there was no internet, so it was really a place where you could sort of you have a free space, and that was very important, I think.
I just want to say, as an economical perspective to survive the alternate space, it's very difficult to survive alternate space because it's non-profit space. So we are always trying to, fundraising system should be first, and then curatorial system is coming out, and then some output project is coming out from the curatorial system. So in case of the Loop, we trying to, during the 20 years, we're trying to getting some more concrete, more diversity fundraising system. In Korea, there is some 3 platform of the funding source. First one is the government, and second one is some industrial company, and third source platform is just audience. So, early era in the Loopspace, we are more dependent from the government funding source. But in middle era, we're trying to getting some fund from the private industrial company. But there is no free money. It means you should give. It's like a give and take. We should give some profit for the industrial company. Some target funding source. So sometimes artists a little bit misunderstood. I'm an artist. I'm a curator. So please, you should be supported money. But those kind of mechanism doesn't work in the art world. It means we had trying to, found the new tools to give some other intangible profit, like advertisement, whatever, for the company. So that is one of the way to survive, our space. And then conceptually, alternate space should be always trying to lead new agenda. yeah. So develop new agenda to suggest, contemporary art scenes to leading, because alternate space should be experimental space to leading contemporary art scene. So I'm just want to, say to, more economical perspective to survive.
I'm looking at Elaine's very first question, right? Alternative to what? In the context of Hong Kong, where we don't have anything mainstream, right? Alternative is something coming up from the mainstream art or mainstream culture in order to explore other way out, right? But in Hong Kong, it's really, really special, if you like. We don't have any mainstream culture. So this question from Elaine always pop up in my mind throughout the past 20 years. What exactly are we doing in response to the so-called mainstream, which doesn't exist in Hong Kong? So that's why when I look back to examine and re-examine what we've been doing in Parasite, I found we are only reinforcing something really, really conservative, right, regarding the definition of being alternative, being a space for artists. Artists supposed to be someone who got a new kind of mentality towards what's happening around us. But then in this really, really peculiarly place, Hong Kong, what exactly do we need? And that's why at a certain point, I really went back to the history of Hong Kong. Why we have Hong Kong in the world. And then why we have all this thing after someone come up with this mode of a city called Hong Kong, right? Then eventually I found out that we really have to get away from all the well-established concept of contemporary art and try to really look deep down into what people need in their daily life, right? They need, for example, clean food. Do we have any clean food supplies in Hong Kong, say for example? So that's why I started something which is at this moment not easily to be classified, whether it is a art space and a community center, whatever. And I think in response to the development of Hong Kong, we have to be really, really get out of all the context in order to find out something that we can do and benefit to people. And this is what I'm doing at the moment with some of my friends. So art is something being included, but not as the only way to work things out.
So talking about people, I wanted to know about your respective initiatives. What was the general atmosphere like for contemporary art? Who was your audience? Was it just yourselves and your friends? Did it matter if no one showed up?
Yeah, because Yogyakarta is a city of students. There are so many universities there, so we never had never had a shortage of public actually in openings. So always young people coming in. But what was interesting that like say more the established artists in that time, or say the painters, they were not interested at all in what we were doing. So there was a sort of anti-Cemeti feeling often. And also because we were the first art space who really started to be critical of who we selected. So this idea of selection did not really exist in that time, because if there was an exhibition, everybody was involved. Always everybody was invited, sort of that. So to create a platform in which we sort of set the rules of, or created a vision of what we wanted to show, that was already something very new. And that's, yeah, that created a lot of, how do you say, stir in the, in the art scene. But from there on, we also developed a crowd, and people who really felt close to us and who always came, and even from other cities they traveled to see what we were doing, and we being supportive as well. So yeah, that was interesting. And of course, yeah, we could not really be connected with government anyway, because we are doing a lot of projects being anti-government. So also, yeah, related with funding and everything. So we just thought, okay, we have the energy and we have the spirit, so we can do everything we want with that. We not really depend on money. So we do try to keep it as low profile as possible. But that really created also the atmosphere of full of possibilities, you know. So in that period of time, this was just like, yeah, things have to happen, and no matter what. Yeah. So that was the most important period.
Hello. The creation of a new public is actually crucial in terms of Scapular Gallery Nomad. It sought to investigate or create or produce a new audience, because new art needs new audiences and new space and new practice. It's a new practice, and because it's away from the brick and mortar, and it's the gallery itself that sought its audience outside the brick and mortar art spaces, I was actually trying to develop a new kind of audience. The person, like lining up in a bank in the queue, you just ask, would you like to see some art? And of course, people will reject you, but it takes some convincing, especially if the line's not moving, right? Supermarkets, wet markets. So yes, the production of a new public was crucial in terms of this project.
Yes. Once again, Hong Kong, right? In fact, the Hong Kong government had already helped a lot in creating new audience for Hong Kong art, right? By providing resources for all the universities and all the community college to run art and design courses, right? Which the thought behind is that Hong Kong government would like to use cultural industry to push the economy of Hong Kong, and that's why they put money to education to to educate more young people to join this industry, right? And that's why during this week, a lot of school teachers bring students down here to look at art. But to me, I found that what they are looking at is not really art, but opportunity for jobs, right? So this is the question, why we see art as job opportunity. And once in a while, I have students coming to me to seek my opinions on the development of art space in Hong Kong, like Dai Guan, like the M+, and I asked them why they're so interested in topics like this, and they said we are going to do a project on examining whether this is the way out for taking art programs in Hong Kong. And to me, this is not what I would like to see regarding the development of art in Hong Kong, and also the development of new audience for art. But so on one hand, we can see a growing population now involving in all kinds of art activities in Hong Kong. But on the other, I found the direction of art in Hong Kong is something not that right. This is what I am now experiencing at this moment.
I think the contemporary arts already generalized. It means, as time goes by, there will be more audience can understand experimental and avant-garde art. So, how can I call it? By digital technology development, I mean, it's more democratic communication system, provided by digital technology development. So there is not any big gap between art expert and non-expert. So we have to prepare about those kind of new audience. So for example, the past time, there was one art evaluate system read by art expert group made up like those kind of people, like a curator and art journalist and collector, those kind of art expert group had operated, art evaluate system. This artwork is good, this artwork is bad, this artwork is expensive, 1 million, this artwork is just $1,000. Who evaluate this system is operated by art expert, right? But now there is another evaluate system is operating by just normal audience, just people. Because I have some experience, when I talk with some young artist, that he's a very famous young artist right now, but he didn't care about art expert. Yeah, he said to me, my artwork not is sincere, and my artwork is not deep, and my artwork is not serious. My work is very right. My artwork is very fancy, but I'm famous right now. My Instagram fandom is over 1 million. So he works very well. That is art. So I think these two group, art expert group, art expert evaluate system group, and just expert group is now sharing. So we have to thinking about how alternate space go to the future. I think authority and the power art expert has is moved to the audience right now, just normal people. So we're thinking about new, audience, and also how we, adapted this new, art world ecosystem. It means we need post-alternative new role and function in the future.
So thank you. Judy and Kith, I want to talk about freedom, creative freedom to stretch the envelope in different ways. Because it seems like despite not having financial support, there was a lot of freedom to experiment, to do things differently compared to the much more rigid way the art world functions today. So for instance, things are very clearly defined right now. Museums do scholarship, they collect, a gallery sells art, alternative spaces show young emerging artists. But Judy, your scapular gallery was a walking gallery without a physical space and a performance piece by you as an artist. And Kith, in addition to exhibitions, you did these publications. You opened a second space within a commercial gallery. So I want to know, what does creative freedom mean to you, and what does it afford you as artists?
I was just telling Mella on the way here that my basis is that as long as I am in pleasure, or I have pleasure in making the artwork, and that there is joy in it, and that there's a space where you enter and the world falls by the wayside while you're creating the work, that itself was enough recompense, as it was sufficient. In other words, my own validating system was myself, and whoever responds to what I'm doing, I was very happy. And as I walked the earth for 5 years, there were a lot of people who did respond to the work. Hans Ulrich actually had a nano museum. It was his pocket shirt. He would bring out a Gilbert and George, and that was his museum. And Chuyozo Ozawa did the milk box gallery that was like a backpack, and he gave everybody like a milk box to make into a gallery, and he would wear them all over Tokyo, wherever he went, wherever he was invited. Sometimes he would pack up like 20 of them and go to Bordeaux, when he would install them in opera houses, in cafes, in what do you call this? Telephone booths. So there were a lot of people who were doing the same thing as I was, and they were not worried that there was no money coming in. The support was to meet other people, create networks, and to meet the same people of your own kind who had the same ideas. That was, I think, the freedom and support and recompense that mattered to me.
I would cite Daegun as an example. Daegun originally was one of the very first building that the British government built in Hong Kong, right? Which was a prison jail. Now the Hong Kong government, which we term it as our second colonizer, right? Our central government. Now they turned this very symbolically, turned the prison into an art space. What does that mean? Right? To me, this is really, really meaningful, because in our first colonizing time, right, the British government will use force to make things happen as they wished. These days, our second colonizer had already give you all kinds of freedom to do whatever you like, but you have to help the economy development. But once you touch the hardcore political stuff, you get trouble. Okay, so the Daegun, I mean the redevelopment of Daegun from a jail to an art space is very symbolic that you can do art within a boundary. Otherwise, you will get trouble. So this is what I can sense, the kind of freedom that we have now in Hong Kong.
I just want to add, because Keith talked about the boundaries. I think the freedom was to be able to be everybody in the art institution, to be the curator, the artist, the gallery director, the dealer, the critic, the historian, to be all of that, and no boundaries as to who you are, and not being put in a box that this is just who you are. In fact, you can do everything in the art institution to create your work.
So I have a question for Mella and Judy again. The 90s was this very political, fraught decade in Indonesia and the Philippines. And I would like you to share how alternative art groups were a political platform for social change.
Yeah, of course, we always think when we have like doing a small show in a small gallery space, or what is the impact? But I think if you look back now, we can see the impact in the sense that it really created a place for critical thinking, which was not allowed in that time. And although, yeah, you do a small movement, but somehow it has an impact, I believe. And in that sense, I also believe that in the power of the art, you know, that it can bring change somehow. Although it's small. Like, for example, after Suharto resigned, artists started to be more critical about not only about the regime, but also about the role of the artist. So before, they only were criticizing the regime, but then if you want to change, what are you want to do actually really for the change. So finally, the artists, they also started to be involved in more education programs, more community projects, and so on. So I think this is very important also to see what's going on in the society and then also react and be also critical again towards yourself as an artist as well.
The Philippine situation was rather strange because during the Marcos era, new art was actually being made in the cultural center of the Philippines, only because of two people, Roberto Chebet and Ray Albano, and they were protected by the president. She was like the buffer in terms of Imelda's whims. For as long as you gave her the space, we gave her the space of her shows, we were left alone to do crazy art, so to speak. But Roberto Chebet, the first director, actually left after a year because he felt that the bureaucratic system was already impinging on the kind of art that he wanted to curate. So he left and set up Shop 6 in 1974, which was the very first alternative space in Manila. So it was a response to leaving the center, and history repeated itself when I became director and did Scapular Gallery Nomad. Even if the administration had changed, the Marcoses were deposed, and I became director of the same museum that Chebet was director. I also left the very same museum because I knew exactly what he was saying in terms of the finite resources. And this time now, there was a directive from the top that with these finite resources, we had to service the whole country, which was impossible. So then I realized it's like, you know, you don't have to depend on the monolithic structures. You could create a speedy, nomadic, quick, very creative, alternative practice, which is Scapular Gallery Nomad. Also, the ones who were really against the Marcoses were the social realists, who were never allowed to exhibit in the center. But when they were deposed, all of them had this huge show. In fact, they were, you know, they were the winners during after the martial law. It was their right to enter the center finally, where all of the images that they used to use to protest against that regime entered the center.
So this question is for Mella and Keith and Jinsok. Do you think the original aims of your organizations have changed? And do you think your respective spaces still feel alternative? Or are they now so well established that they are more like institutions?
Yeah, I'm already talk about new law of the social law, new social law of the alternative space. You know, now, you know, our society is changing so fast by technology development. Sometimes we can adjust this very, you know, accelerate, you know, movement in society changing. So, you know, I'm still thinking about what is the new role of the post-alternate space for the future, because, you know, I'm just want to mention about 90s role of the alternate space in Korea. 90s is very important turning point in Korean society. You know, in economy, productive economic system is stopped. We are open globalization. Also, you know, civilian government, new government is started. You know, in Korea is past time. It's an army government's dictatorship, right? So among that time, you know, in Korean art field, art world, role of the alternate space is that suggests, how can I call it? At that time in Korea, contemporary art world, there's two big groups. One group is Minjung art, you know, Minjung art, social, engaging realism art. And other group is Empowerment art group. So one of the role of the alternate space to link these two antagonism group, dualism group. There is not, all artists working in these two groups. There is not any shared boundary. So role of the alternate space, important role of the alternate space is link these two groups. But it's now, it's changing. Korean art, contemporary art was totally changed. So one of the, I cannot say right now what is a new law of the post-alternate space, but I'm still researching. But one of the things is that I'm trying to pursue absolute aesthetic artistic value you should make because of, I'm already told you, art is very publicized now. So I think that the scene of what is new, very absolute artistic value is the what else for the future. Totally independent from independent any social relationship or political relationship. What is pure or absolute artistic, aesthetic value? We can make it. That is one of the law of the post-alternate space in the future.
Ever since I stepped down as the chairperson of Parasite, I never go to the current Parasite, simply because it is no longer my cup of tea. But from what I had heard, that I think Parasite has successfully changed to what now is run by one of the camps that I just mentioned, right? The other half of the Parasite members, and they're successfully running a institutionalized kind of art space now.
Yeah, I think it's always very important still to think about during your development of running a space. What are the necessities and what is the urgencies, not as you running the space, but what is needed in the country or in the city or in the community. And I think our space is in that sense still very much fulfilling a role of the dialogue and creating openness for questions, and especially now in it becomes more conservative, Indonesia. So I think still the art has a really important role to fulfill, to create alternative way of thinking. And in that sense also we changed our name from Cemeti Gallery to Cemeti Art House, and now the last two years with new staff running the space in Cemeti Institute for Art and Society, with the idea also that we become more like it becomes almost like a school or like an alternative way of thinking about education. So it's not only about creating exhibitions, but there's so many other things, so many roles to fulfill. And in that sense also, it's interesting to see how art itself and the artists who are working with it are also changing in a way of thinking and creation as well. So, for example, what is now very interesting is that the role of the internet, and so at the moment we have a strong censorship actually from the internet. So before we had more free space to express in the space than we have nowadays, because everything is posted directly. And just recently an artist was caught by the police for interrogation, several days stayed in jail actually, because she posted something related to babies and they think about abortion and so on. So suddenly the public is going to judge and to how do you say? Yeah, to how you call it? To censor, yeah. So it's a new way of censorship, and in that sense, I think the artists and the institutions still have many roles to play.
So we actually have very little time, but maybe we can take just one question.
So just one question? Because I have two questions regarding the financial
Is it okay, Stephanie?
Okay, so the first question is The first question, can I ask, how do you guys, how do the speakers on the stage, how did you guys get your first bucket of money to establish your own space? Because we all know money is quite critical for either artists or galleries or anyone, anyone basically. So how did you guys start your first situation with first space with your first bucket of money? And the second question is it true that the success of art space correlated to political stance? We all know that a lot of artists are creating artworks, or art space are publishing artworks that against the government, but we all know that they are already established artists, well-established artists. Is it true that it is really hard for emerging artists or art space to do something against the government, or the government against the government political stand? So is it true that they are correlated? Thank you.
So maybe one of you can take a question about where did you get your first funding to start your space?
Yeah, when we started, we just tried to sell, because our sort of independency was only try to survive if we can try to sell some drawings or works on paper. So that's also how we could survive through these years, actually. So we created a stock room. So we have like independent space for all kinds of projects, and then we have a stock room to sell mostly small works, drawings that you just can easily bring. In the beginning, we also just sold to tourists, and then finally we could sort of create a market for artists who are for people who are interested to buy works, or we could sell works to museums nowadays. But still, I mean, it's hard, and especially in the beginning, we just, like for example, we printed 6 invitations in one time. It means that we had the discipline to have 6 exhibitions online already to print for half a year, you know. So it's not about the money, but it's more about the discipline, I think. And yeah, and it's until now it's like that. And nowadays, related to your second questions, I think also our role is also to work together with the government nowadays, and to create an awareness of the importance of culture and of the arts in society nowadays, and to convince them that they have to give back money, that they have to give money to the cultural scene. And this took a long process as well, since the independence, since say the Reformation period and the democratic period. So.
So I think we have to wrap things up. But I want to thank all of the panelists, very dear old friends, for coming together and discussing and reminding us how we don't actually need tons of money to do something super, extremely interesting and meaningful. It takes a village to raise an artist and an independent art space. So I really hope all of you will go out and support your local art initiatives. Thank you.